I woke up shivering in the rental car for the fourth night in a row, my back screaming in pain, my neck locked in angles number 67-year-old should endure. Outside, the Grand Vista Resort parking lot lights cut harsh shadows across my face. I shifted, twisted, anything to find comfort, but the seat refused. 3 floors above, through the window, I could see the soft glow of the room I'd paid for $150 a night for, the very room where my son Marcus, his wife Stephanie, and my grandchildren slept in beds I had also paid for. And here I was, crammed into a Toyota Camry, aching and humiliated. This was meant to be a family vacation, a week of mountains, memories, and rare moments with my grandchildren. Instead, I was treated like baggage. Worse, even luggage gets put in the room. Grandma likes sleeping in the car, Stephanie had announced earlier, loud enough for other guests to hear, justifying my exile. The shame burned more sharply than my joints. But what they didn't know, could never know, was that this poor old woman on a fixed income had $850,000 tucked away in investments, and the credit card they'd been treating as a limitless ATM for days belonged to me. I could cancel it with a single phone call. I was about to teach them a lesson they'd never forget. But first, let me take you back 2 weeks, to the beginning of this disaster, so you can see exactly how it unfolded, and why what I did next felt so satisfying. My name is Dorothy Jean Mitchell, 67 years old, born in Chicago, raised with the values of hard work, education, and discretion about money. I spent 40 years at the United States Postal Service, starting as a mail carrier and eventually rising to supervisor. I met my husband Raymond at 24, a strong, steady union electrician with a laugh that could fill a room. Together we raised our son, Marcus, in a small South Side house. Raymond passed away 15 years ago from a sudden heart attack, leaving me financially secure thanks to insurance, pension survivor benefits, and my own postal pension. The $300,000 life insurance grew over 15 careful years into $850,000. Though I never told a soul. I lived modestly, drove old cars, shopped frugally. Everyone assumed I barely made ends meet. That assumption kept me safe. Marcus, now 40, married to Stephanie for 6 years, had 2 children, Jasmine, 10, and Devin, 8. Marcus worked in IT support at a hospital. Stephanie was a pharmaceutical sales rep. Their suburban life was comfortable, flashy even, posted constantly on social media. I saw them mostly on holidays, the kids barely knowing me. I was grandma, someone who sent cards and gifts, but not a real presence in their lives. 2 weeks ago, Marcus called one Tuesday evening, his tone suspiciously cheerful. "Mom, how are you?" I hesitated. Marcus only used that voice when he wanted something. "I'm fine. What's going on?" Stephanie chimed in. "We feel bad. The kids barely know their grandmother. We want to fix that. A vacation? A week in Colorado, mountains and bonding time with the kids. They'd pay." My instincts were wary. Marcus never initiated trips like this, but the promise of seeing my grandchildren up close tugged at my heart. I agreed. The Monday flight out of O'Hare was early. I packed carefully. Warm clothes, comfortable shoes, medications, a book. At the airport, the kids buzzed with excitement. Stephanie barely acknowledged me. Marcus hugged me briefly. Everything felt off. Then the truth hit. I'd left my wallet at home. Marcus asked, "Can you cover our tickets on your card? I'll Venmo you immediately." Reluctantly, I did. $2,800 for tickets, plus baggage. Stephanie's card declined. Marcus's also failed at the rental counter. Each time, my credit card, the one they assumed they could exploit, came to the rescue. I was silently complicit, but a knot of unease tightened. The resort itself was stunning. Grand Vista Resort. Stone, timber, mountains, luxury I'd never experienced. But the reality hit that night. No cot, no alternate room. "Mom, just sleep on the floor." "Extra blankets," Marcus suggested. My hips ached, My back protested, but I did it. Next morning, I struggled to even walk, while they were bright, refreshed, ready for breakfast. Every meal, activity, and rental from ski passes to spa treatments went on my card. By the end of day 2, I'd spent thousands, barely noticed. My warnings brushed off, labeled cheap for even suggesting caution. That second night, Stephanie refused to share the room. I was banished to the lobby on a decorative bench, woken at midnight by security. The humiliation was absolute. Finally, I slept in the car cold, awkward, 2 hours at best. The third day repeated the cycle. Breakfasts, ski rentals, lunches, dinners, all my money. By day 4, my body ached, my spirit crushed. But then, in the dead of night, I overheard them laughing outside my door. "She's gullible," Stephanie said. "We've had a free vacation. Old people don't need sleep anyway. We save money." Marcus laughed. The truth hit like a punch. This wasn't carelessness. This was deliberate. They had planned to scam me, humiliate me, and take advantage. My son and his wife were thieves in my own home. I returned to the car, my hands shaking, my heart racing. I called the credit card company. Report lost. Cancel immediately. Done. The card was dead. All future charges declined. Then I called the rental car company, booked a new vehicle on a different account, and arranged a flight home. I went to the hotel, checked out, deactivated the keys. 3 more days of abuse. Over. I sat in the car, exhausted but free as morning broke. Texts poured in. Panic from Marcus and Stephanie. "Where are you? We need the car. The room. Breakfast?" Silent, I let them stew. No guilt. They would now face the consequences of their own greed and deceit. The following hours and days were a blur of careful planning and silent satisfaction. I had canceled the card they'd been using and booked a rental car on my secret account. It felt empowering, knowing that their little scheme, designed to humiliate me, would now collapse. At 7 a.m., I picked up the new car, drove back to the hotel, parked in the guest lot instead of the main resort lot, and waited. Every text from Marcus and Stephanie felt like fuel for the fire. "Mom, where are you? Breakfast is ready. You can't just take the car." I ignored them. Silence was my shield. The previous night's humiliation had pushed me past anger into a cold, calculated clarity. Their plan had been simple: lure me into paying for everything, keep me uncomfortable, and exploit my love for them. Every meal, every activity, every rental, it was all theirs for free. And the sleeping arrangements? Deliberate cruelty. Stephanie couldn't share a room. Marcus wouldn't challenge her. The result was me, a 67-year-old woman, alone, on the floor. Then the car. Enough. By mid-morning, Marcus and Stephanie were in full panic. Calls, texts, messages piled up. They hadn't realized the card would be dead. The Grand Vista Resort now had a zero-balance card on file. Their room keys? Deactivated. I watched them flounder through the texts and frantic phone calls. They were supposed to have 3 more days of luxury. Instead, they faced a hotel that wouldn't let them in, declining charges, and embarrassment in the lobby. The children were confused and tired, but I didn't feel guilt. I felt relief. I had finally taken a stand, reclaiming control over my dignity and my money. The day progressed as I packed my essentials into my small suitcase. Every detail was deliberate. A change of clothes, toiletries, medications. I wasn't running away. I was exiting with grace, prepared for the fallout. By 10 a.m., I was at the airport, returned the new rental, and checked in for my flight home. Texts still poured in. Stephanie accused me of selfishness, leaving the kids stranded. Marcus pleaded, "Mom, we're desperate. Please come back." I didn't respond. Silence was my answer. Meanwhile, the fallout of my actions unfolded in real time. Marcus and Stephanie, stranded at the resort without a valid card, were forced to face the consequences of their own recklessness. The children, unaware of the financial deception, suffered confusion and minor distress. Every attempt to use my canceled card failed. They scrambled to find alternative solutions, calling Stephanie's parents to wire emergency funds. The money took days to arrive. They booked the first available rooms, settling for a Motel 6 on the highway. No amenities, no mountains, no luxuries. Meals were basic, far below the standards of their previous indulgence. The contrast between my calculated, peaceful morning and their chaotic scramble was stark, almost poetic. I settled into my flight, watching Chicago approach beneath the clouds. The city I had always called home was waiting, quiet and familiar. The phone buzzed relentlessly, but I ignored it. My heart, once heavy with anticipation of family bonds, now felt lighter than it had in years. I had not only defended my finances but also established a boundary that could no longer be crossed. Back in Chicago, the texts continued for days. Marcus sent detailed accounts of their misadventures, the resort checkout, the denial at restaurants, the frantic search for affordable accommodations, the kids' distress. I read them all, and a strange satisfaction filled me. Finally, they were learning what it felt like to be denied the comfort and convenience they had assumed was owed to them at my expense. Within a week, the intensity of the messages died down. I assumed they had exhausted themselves, or at least recognized the severity of their actions. My home became a sanctuary once again, free from manipulation and exploitation. Every space, every item, every quiet moment was mine to enjoy without intrusion. The week that followed was a time of reflection and planning. I realized that the most important victory wasn't the money, although that was significant. It was reclaiming my autonomy, my peace, and my self-respect. I began to consider how to protect myself moving forward. The story of my trip, my son and his wife exploiting me, could serve as a lesson. A cautionary tale not just for me but for others in similar situations. I also recognized the importance of careful documentation. Receipts, texts, records of charges, all of these became part of a growing portfolio that could serve as evidence if further action was needed. I knew that while small claims court had limits, the principle of accountability was more powerful than any monetary sum. By the end of the week, I had solidified a plan. The $12,347 I had spent, though intended for a family vacation, would not be wasted. I decided to invest it in an experience for myself, one that would be joyful, liberating, and beyond the reach of those who had attempted to exploit me. I booked a 2-week luxury Caribbean cruise, all-inclusive, first-class accommodations, balcony suite, fine dining, spa treatments, excursions on pristine beaches. My companion was Marlene, my closest friend and fellow retired postal worker. Sharp, funny, and fearless, she understood my story and my triumph. "Are you sure?" she asked. "It's a lot." I smiled. "I've spent this much on a vacation where I slept in a car. Now it's my turn to truly enjoy life." The cruise was transformative. Turquoise waters, sunsets from my private balcony, 7-course meals, massages, laughter with Marlene. Each moment reinforced the lesson I had learned. Power, dignity, and joy were mine to reclaim. And though I shared glimpses on social media, Marcus and Stephanie were notably absent from my posts. They watched from afar, witnessing the life I had chosen to embrace fully without them. Returning home, a letter awaited me from Marcus. Hesitant, I opened it. He admitted the truth. They had planned the trip to exploit me, were in financial trouble, and had taken advantage of my love and trust. The sleeping arrangements, the constant charges, the casual cruelty, it had all been deliberate. He promised to repay, albeit gradually. Stephanie blamed him, blamed me, blamed circumstances. But the core truth remained. They had orchestrated a plan to use me. I read the letter repeatedly. Grief and sorrow mixed with satisfaction, not for the loss of money, but for the loss of the trust I had once placed in my family. Yet, I felt no bitterness, only clarity. Actions have consequences. I could no longer allow manipulation to dictate my life. Returning to my quiet home in Chicago felt like stepping into a sanctuary. The chaos of the resort, the manipulations, the constant feeling of being exploited was all behind me. For the first time in weeks, I could breathe without the weight of obligation pressing down on me. Yet, the texts and calls from Marcus and Stephanie still lingered in my mind, a reminder of the betrayal I had endured. I refused to respond. Every ignored call, every deleted message reinforced the boundary I had set, a line they had crossed and could not undo. The $12,347 I had spent on what was supposed to be a family vacation had not been lost. It had become a tool for liberation. I decided to channel it into something that would bring me joy, not humiliation. I called Marlene and told her about my plan, a 2-week luxury cruise in the Caribbean. First-class cabin, all-inclusive meals, spa treatments, excursions, and uninterrupted time away from the people who had sought to exploit me. Marlene laughed, incredulous. "You spent over 12 grand on a trip where you slept in a car," she said. "Now you're doing it again but for yourself." I love it. Booking the cruise felt empowering. Every detail was chosen for comfort, beauty, and indulgence. The suite had a balcony overlooking turquoise waters. The spa offered massages and facials I had never allowed myself to experience. And the excursions promised adventure and tranquility in equal measure. For once, I wasn't being taken advantage of. I was the one in control. Every penny, every choice, every moment was mine. On the day of departure, I packed carefully. Clothes, toiletries, medications, and of course, the essentials for 2 weeks of freedom. Marlene arrived, bright and eager, and we laughed over the absurdity of the trip we were leaving behind, the one where my son and his wife had manipulated and humiliated me. The Caribbean awaited, a sharp contrast to the cold, stressful mornings in the car, and the constant financial strain I had endured in Colorado. The cruise was more than a vacation. It was a reclaiming of life. We swam in crystalline waters, dined under the stars, and watched sunsets that painted the sky with colors I had almost forgotten existed. I felt lighter, freer, and more alive than I had in years. Each day was a celebration of my autonomy and my ability to choose joy without fear of exploitation. One posted a few photos online smiling on the beach, toasting champagne with Marlene, parasailing over turquoise waves, careful not to tag Marcus or Stephanie. I knew they were watching. I imagined their frustration, their disbelief, and a small, quiet satisfaction warmed me from the inside. Meanwhile, life back home continued in the usual quiet rhythm I had grown to love. The house was mine, the spaces were mine, and for the first time, I felt truly unburdened. I had taken action not just against financial exploitation but against emotional manipulation. The lesson I had learned was clear. Love and generosity must be given freely, but never at the expense of one's own dignity or well-being. 2 weeks later, the cruise ended, and I returned home rejuvenated. Waiting for me was a letter from Marcus. I nearly tossed it, expecting excuses, guilt, or further manipulation. Instead, the letter admitted everything. They had planned the Colorado trip to exploit me financially. Every expense I had covered, every humiliating night in the car, every subtle insult and dismissive comment had been part of a calculated scheme. They were in financial trouble, drowning in debts and trying to create a vacation they couldn't afford on their own. Marcus confessed the truth with honesty I hadn't expected. The sleeping arrangements, the constant financial burden, even the casual cruelty, it had all been deliberate. Stephanie, he explained, had pressured and manipulated him at every step. And yet, he admitted his cowardice, his failure to protect me, and the shame he felt watching me treated as less than human while the children played obliviously. I read the letter 3 times, each reading a mixture of grief, sorrow, and understanding. The money, the humiliation, the betrayal, it all weighed heavily. But I realized the most important part was the recognition of accountability. Marcus acknowledged the debt. $12,347, the full amount I had spent on their deception. He promised to repay, gradually if necessary, over months or even years. Yet, the trust that had been broken could never be fully restored. Rather than respond immediately, I allowed myself reflection. I considered forgiveness but recognized the importance of boundaries. Actions have consequences. Marcus and Stephanie's choices had real repercussions, and my decision to enforce accountability was not vengeful, it was necessary. I updated my will, directing that my assets go to charity, two organizations that support the elderly against financial exploitation and abuse. Marcus and Stephanie would inherit nothing, not out of spite, but because their choices had demonstrated that trust and respect could not be assumed. The weeks that followed were transformative. I settled into a smaller condo in a senior community, surrounded by friends, activities, and security. I traveled regularly, planning a spring trip to Paris with Marlene, first class all the way. I volunteered at a legal aid clinic, sharing my story with elderly clients, showing them they were not alone and that they had rights. Each day, I felt stronger, more confident, and more independent. Even though Marcus sent monthly payments to $100 at a time, reflecting what he could afford, I kept meticulous records. Not because I needed the money, but because he needed to recognize responsibility. Each deposit, each note, reinforced the lesson that actions carry consequences. Whether or not I ever fully forgave him was irrelevant. I had reclaimed my dignity, and nothing could take that away. The grandkids sent handmade cards through Marcus's sister, simple drawings expressing love. I responded with savings bonds, ensuring that the children benefited without giving their parents access. My love for them remained, but it was tempered by the understanding that protection and boundaries were essential. Life after the cruise settled into a rhythm that felt entirely mine. No more sleepless nights in a car. No more feeling invisible or exploited. I woke up each morning with a sense of calm I hadn't known in years. My condo was cozy, safe, and filled with laughter from my friends and neighbors. I had created a space where respect was guaranteed, and dignity wasn't optional. Yet, the shadow of Marcus and Stephanie lingered. They tried to reach me through messages, calls, and even intermediaries, pleading, rationalizing, and attempting to guilt me. "Mom, please, we didn't mean it like that," Marcus wrote one afternoon. Stephanie sent a long text, apologizing for the sleeping arrangements, the pressure, the way things spiraled out of control. But I had learned the hard way that words, after actions like theirs, were meaningless without accountability. I had spent weeks in agony so that they could enjoy themselves at my expense, and nothing in their apologies would undo that. I focused instead on myself. My mornings began with yoga, gentle stretches to ease the aches from years of labor, and a body that had been taxed more than I realized. Breakfasts were leisurely, with fresh fruit, warm tea, and the quiet knowledge that I was not serving anyone else's agenda. I traveled locally, exploring museums, theaters, and gardens I had ignored for decades. Each day was a declaration of independence, a celebration of having finally taken control of my life. Then came the first monthly payment from Marcus. $200, small but symbolic. I deposited it with care, not because I needed it, but because it represented recognition of responsibility. Each transaction, each little reminder, reinforced that choices have consequences. I kept a ledger, meticulous, precise, a testament to boundaries and the importance of accountability. As the months passed, I became involved with a local senior legal aid program. Sharing my story became my mission. I spoke to groups of seniors, explaining how to protect themselves from financial abuse, what signs to watch for, and how to assert legal rights against exploitation even from family members. Their eyes would widen as I recounted my experiences in Colorado, the trips, the subtle humiliations, the betrayal. They'd lean in, hanging on every word. I had transformed a personal nightmare into a tool to empower others. In the meantime, Marcus and Stephanie struggled to regain some sense of normalcy. Marcus sent payments faithfully, slow and steady, though it would take years to repay the debt. Stephanie, meanwhile, had initiated the divorce. She cited financial strain, irreconcilable differences, and the fallout from the Colorado trip. I read the filings quietly, without anger, but with a deep sense of satisfaction. The consequences of their actions were unfolding as naturally as the tide. Life, for me, had taken on a vibrant quality. I met new friends at my senior community, joined book clubs, art classes, and even organized a small travel group. Marlene and I planned our Paris trip meticulously, from first-class tickets to guided tours and fine dining. For the first time in decades, I was living without fear, manipulation, or financial pressure from anyone. The joy was palpable, infectious, and wholly deserved. One afternoon, I received an unexpected message from Jasmine, my granddaughter. It was simple, handwritten, and heartfelt. "Grandma, we miss you." My heart ached in a way that was tender, not painful. I replied with small gifts, ensuring they benefited without giving their parents access. Love could exist without enabling exploitation. Then came the difficult moment of confronting my own emotions. I realized that no amount of restitution could restore the trust I once had in Marcus. I would always be cautious, always aware of the potential for exploitation. But I also realized that the loss of trust did not equate to bitterness in my daily life. I was free from the chains of manipulation, and in that freedom, I had found a deep, unshakable peace. Through it all, I continued documenting every interaction, every payment, every apology, every attempt to manipulate or guilt me was recorded. It wasn't vengeance, it was protection, a safeguard to ensure that boundaries were respected. I had learned that love without respect is dangerous, and generosity without accountability is exploitable. The small joys became the backbone of my happiness. Morning walks in the park, coffees with friends, laughter over shared meals, and quiet evenings on my balcony watching the city lights flicker. I celebrated life, not as a passive observer, but as an active participant, making choices that honored my well-being. Even though Marcus continued sending payments, I made no moves to restore the old dynamic. They had taught me a lesson I would never forget. Family does not mean permission to exploit. Family does not justify humiliation. And family certainly does not override the dignity and independence of those who raised you. As months passed, the healing became complete. I planned local trips, small getaways, and spent weekends indulging in my hobbies. The pain and humiliation of Colorado became a distant memory, replaced by empowerment and joy. And when I finally returned from Paris with Marlene, I felt an accomplishment unlike any other. I had taken my loss, my betrayal, and turned it into freedom, joy, and a legacy of empowerment for others. The day finally arrived when the last text from Marcus flashed on my phone. "Mom, please, can we talk?" I stared at it without replying. Years of care, patience, and sacrifice had been manipulated, twisted into a scheme that left me humiliated, exhausted, and financially exploited. But the story wasn't over. I held all the power now, and I intended to use it wisely. I remembered every moment in Colorado, the early mornings in the rental car, the long drives into the mountains, the feeling of invisible eyes watching while my back ached and my dignity was ignored. I remembered the laughter I overheard, the words of manipulation, the casual cruelty of being treated like an ATM rather than a mother. Each memory burned, but it fueled my resolve. I was done being exploited, and I started with my legal preparations. I met with a small claims lawyer to ensure I had a clear path for restitution. Every receipt, text, and document was organized meticulously. Marcus owed me $12,347, every penny accounted for. But the money was secondary. The message had to be clear. Family does not entitle someone to exploitation. Respect and boundaries are non-negotiable. When Marcus and Stephanie tried to justify their actions, claiming ignorance or accidental oversight, I had the evidence to counter every claim. But I also realized that pursuing the full legal route wasn't always necessary for closure. Sometimes, The satisfaction of taking back control, of reclaiming dignity, outweighs any monetary gain. I made my own life a priority. The condo, the trips, the friendships I indulged in, experiences that I had long denied myself. The Caribbean cruise with Marlene had been transformative, but it was just the beginning. We planned excursions, cultural trips, and experiences that reminded me daily of my independence and worth. Every sunset, every meal, every moment of laughter reinforced that I was no longer bound by past betrayals. When the first installment from Marcus arrived, I didn't feel pride. I felt acknowledgement, a recognition that actions have consequences, that exploitation cannot go unchallenged. I kept track, not for the money's sake, but for the principle. I had taught a painful, unforgettable lesson. Trust is earned, not owed. Then came the letter from Marcus. He admitted everything: the planning, the scheme, the intent to exploit me for a vacation they could not afford. He expressed guilt, sorrow, and an understanding of my anger. Yet, words alone were insufficient. The damage was done, and relationships could not be rebuilt instantly. Forgiveness, if it came at all, would not erase the lessons I had learned or the strength I had gained. I realized something crucial. Family is not defined by proximity or shared blood, but by respect, care, and mutual consideration. The betrayal I endured had been devastating, but it also illuminated the kind of life I wanted to cultivate moving forward. I chose experiences that honored me, friendships that lifted me, and boundaries that protected me. I continued supporting my grandchildren discreetly, sending savings bonds and educational gifts directly to them, ensuring they benefited without empowering the parents who had exploited me. Love could exist without enabling abuse. I watched them grow from afar, satisfied that they were supported responsibly. Months later, I reflected on the Colorado incident and my actions afterward. Canceling the card, reclaiming my power, and refusing to be manipulated had been transformative. I had turned humiliation into liberation, betrayal into strength. My life was now mine to shape, my happiness a priority, and my dignity untouchable. The story of my vacation and its aftermath became part of my advocacy. I spoke openly at senior legal aid workshops, explaining how financial exploitation often comes cloaked in familial duty. I shared every detail: the car, the resort, the texts, the schemes to empower others. The seniors I met listened with rapt attention, many shedding tears or nodding in recognition. My experience became a beacon, a guide, and a warning. Protect yourself, set boundaries, and never underestimate the value of your own life and resources. And as for Marcus and Stephanie, their lives carried the consequences of their actions. Slowly, grudgingly, payments arrived. But the true cost was in the lessons learned, the humiliation, the necessity of accountability, and the realization that exploiting a parent has repercussions far beyond immediate gains. I had reclaimed my story, and that was worth more than any monetary repayment. Today, I am stronger, wiser, and more joyful than I have been in decades. I travel, I volunteer, I nurture friendships, and I live without fear of exploitation. I have rebuilt a life filled with respect, love, and intentional choices. My grandchildren are supported, my independence is secured, and my peace is absolute. I am freed. If there's one thing I want you to take from my story, it's this: your worth is non-negotiable. Protect it fiercely. Never allow anyone, even family, to diminish your dignity or exploit your generosity. Life is too short to surrender your freedom to those who do not value it. And to everyone watching this, if you or someone you know has faced exploitation, know that you are not alone. Take steps to protect yourself, educate those around you, and never be afraid to reclaim your power. Your story matters, your life matters, and your happiness is worth fighting for. If my story resonated with you, hit that like button, share this video with friends and family, and subscribe for more real-life stories that inspire strength, courage, and empowerment. Don't let anyone take what is rightfully yours. Stand up, protect yourself, and live boldly, you deserve it. Asterisk.